They say the stones of the tower remember, that the thick, cold walls drink in the last gasps of traitors, queens, and prisoners alike, hoarding every secret and sorrow in their ancient mortar. For almost 1,000 years, the Tower of London has been a fortress, a royal palace, an armory, a zoo, a treasury, but above all, it has been a prison, and often, an execution ground. Some who entered its gates in chains never left. Some never truly left at all. Of all the stories that echo through the tower's endless passageways, none clings so stubbornly to the damp, London fog as the tale of Anne Boleyn, England's most infamous queen, beheaded by the command of the husband who once tore apart a kingdom to have her. Anne Boleyn's rise was like something out of a courtly romance. She was not born to be queen. She was clever, charming, and bold in a time when women were not supposed to be any of those things. She caught the eye of King Henry VIII, who was already married to Catherine of Aragon. Obsessed with Anne, Henry broke England away from the Roman Catholic Church, cast aside his first wife, and crowned Anne as his queen. For a time, she was the most powerful woman in England. She gave birth to a daughter, Elizabeth, a child who would one day rule as one of the greatest monarchs in English history. But Anne's failure to produce a male heir sealed her doom. By the spring of 1536, the winds at court had turned cold and sharp. Whispers of betrayal swirled around Anne like ravens circling a dying beast. Henry, grown restless and hungry for a new wife who might bear him a son, turned his favor to Jane Seymour, one of Anne's ladies-in-waiting. Suddenly, old friends vanished. Allies turned their backs. Her brother and several courtiers were arrested and accused of adultery and treason alongside her. The charges were scandalous, obscene, and almost certainly false. But in Henry's court, truth bent easily to the king's will. Anne was arrested on May 2, 1536. They say she trembled only once, when she was rowed across the Thames to the Tower's Traitor's Gate, the same grim waterway that had swallowed so many doomed souls before her. She was 35 years old. Inside her cold stone cell in the Queen's house, Anne prayed. She laughed and wept by turns, veering from trembling fear to strange calm. She maintained her innocence to the very end, declaring that she had been a faithful wife and a loyal queen. But no prayer would soften the king's resolve. On May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn, Queen of England, stepped onto a small wooden scaffold on Tower Green. Unlike most who were executed at the Tower, she was spared the English axe. Henry arranged for a skilled French swordsman, hoping to grant her a quicker, cleaner death. Even in her final moments, Henry seemed to crave control over how her story would be remembered. Anne wore a dark grey gown trimmed with fur. Her hair was tucked up beneath a simple coif, so the sword would find no resistance. Before the small gathering of nobles and guards, she spoke calmly, asking God to have mercy on her soul and to bless the king who sent her to her death. Some say she forgave him. Some say her eyes flickered with cold fire. When the executioner raised his blade and knelt, he distracted her with a shout to fetch his sword, a trick to keep her still, then swung once, clean and final. Her head fell, and with it, the last warm breath of the woman who changed the course of England's fate. She was buried quickly in an unmarked grave inside the Chapel Royal of St. Peter ad Vincula, just yards from where she died. Her remains still lie there beneath the cold stone floor, among the bones of other traitors, queens, and forgotten prisoners. But Anne herself never truly left. The first stories of Anne's ghost emerged not long after her execution. Over centuries, they multiplied and twisted through the Tower's dark lore. Yeoman warders, the Tower's famous beefeaters, speak in hushed voices of footsteps echoing down empty corridors, of a faint rustle of silk trailing along stone walls when no one is near, of an icy breath that slides over the skin like a cold hand. Some say that every year on the anniversary of her death, May 19th, Anne Boleyn's headless spirit rises from her grave and walks the Tower's grounds. Witnesses describe her as a pale woman in a Tudor gown, her face forever hidden, her severed head cradled carefully in her hands. She is seen drifting near the Queen's house where she was imprisoned, standing solemnly near Tower Green, or kneeling at the chapel's altar where she was laid to rest. Some believe she prays for her lost life, for her daughter who would become a queen without ever truly knowing her mother, and perhaps for a king who traded love for power and left behind a ghost. One of the most chilling tales comes from the sentries who once guarded the Tower's dark corners. In the 19th century, a soldier patrolling near the chapel claimed he saw a strange white glow on the steps. As he approached, he froze. There was a woman, her dress heavy and old-fashioned, her hands cupped around her severed head. The soldier challenged the figure, but received no answer, only silence. Terrified, he lunged with his bayonet, but the blade met only air. The ghost vanished. They found the guard hours later, still at his post but struck dumb with terror, unable to explain what he had seen, until days later, when his voice finally returned. Anne's ghost does not always appear whole. Sometimes it is only a shadow at a window. Sometimes it is just the softest whisper in the bloody tower, a place that knows betrayal well. There are tales of the White Tower's spiral staircases echoing with footsteps that stop suddenly, as if someone remembered they have no head to lift, no eyes to see. Visitors today speak of sudden, unexplained cold spots, the prickling sense of being watched, or the sound of faint weeping behind ancient doors. Some say Anne's spirit drifts through the tower as if searching for her lost crown, her lost justice, or perhaps for the child she left behind. In life, Anne never met her granddaughter. The tower has its secrets, but it offers no reunions for the dead. The ghost of Anne Boleyn has been sighted far beyond the tower's ancient walls, too. At Blickling Hall in Norfolk, her childhood home, legends say she returns every year on the night of her death. A ghostly carriage drawn by headless horses races up the long drive. Within sits Anne, her head resting coldly in her lap. Servants once claimed that the echo of hoofbeats could be heard long before the carriage appeared, and that the candle flames would gutter and die when she passed by. At Hever Castle, where Anne spent her happiest days before she was queen, guests have reported glimpses of a woman in Tudor dress wandering the gardens in the twilight hours. Some swear they've seen her near the old oak tree where Henry once courted her with whispered promises that turned to dust. The Tower of London today is a tourist attraction, bustling by day with visitors and guards in bright scarlet coats. But when dusk falls and the gates close, a hush settles over the old stones. Beneath the crown jewels and bright banners is a fortress soaked in blood and sorrow. If you stand near Tower Green at night, you might feel it. That cold hush when the wind stills. That sense that someone stands just behind you. A whisper on the edge of hearing. A memory too strong to die. Some say ghosts linger where they have unfinished business. Others believe they are trapped by the trauma of violent ends, caught forever in the moment they took their final breath. For Anne Boleyn, perhaps it is both. Betrayed by the man who swore to love her, she died for politics, pride, and power. She watches still, a queen in death as she was in life, regal, tragic, and endlessly restless. So if you ever visit the tower, listen closely, feel the stones beneath your feet. They have soaked in centuries of secrets, none more sorrowful than the story of the headless queen who walks by moonlight. And should you hear the soft tread of silk skirts on ancient steps, or glimpse a pale woman cradling her crownless head, do not run, do not scream. Only bow your head and remember her name, Anne Boleyn, the ghost who reminds us that even kings and kingdoms cannot silence the truth forever.